I've been hearing a lot lately about men don't talk, but in my experience, men do talk, just people aren't listening. So it's going to be me and a group of blokes discussing our struggles and victories through life. Warning, there may be some bad language, so apologies to all the moms, especially my own. Let's get going.
Changed. I like the photo that you got.
Oh, thank you. I mean, yeah, this is the Black Country Blokes chewing the fat about everything it is, mental health, disability, and life in general. Here with me, Kev Dillon, and my partner in crime, Lee Cadman. And now we've got two special guests today. We've got Sam from Ask Marc, who are a branch off from our partners and friends, Black Country Women's Aid. And we've been trying to get you on for a while. You've been going for about 2 years now, Sam.
Just over a year and a couple of months now. We're heading into our second year. So we launched on International Men's Day in 2021.
And we've been promoting, even before you've gone, like, because Debbie and Sarah, we've had a few people. We did the fire walk for you guys, and it's a great organisation. And we've got Luke on from Wild and Well. Smashed it, didn't I?
Yes,
yeah,
you did.
I never doubted myself.
I didn't do that.
And we're going to be talking about both these organisations, because it's wonderful when organisations get together. You see, how can we help each other? And that's exactly what you guys have done.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, we're going to start with our gratitude list. I always like to start with our gratitude list, remind ourselves that even in the darkest days, we have got something to be grateful for. And me, as I say, I mean, I got the club downstairs. Last night, I was grateful to have so many good coaches. We had two clubs come over, one from Junction to spar with Osma, because he's in the championships in 2 weeks. Their lad Ali come over, who's gone in the weight above. We also had Worcester come over from Worcester. Their lads in the Midlands final to spar with our lads. But like Lee come early, I had Christian, I had Jay, I had Dad, Josh, and all the coaches stuck in Big John, and we all worked together. So we had the sparring. Then we had 4 lads who were fighting this weekend. So we had all bases covered, from open class to up and comers to beginners, and we did it together as a team. And I'm very grateful to have a good team behind me. What are you grateful for?
Oh, it's easy this week, Kev. Usually I have to think a bit more, but we've been doing some fundraising for my daughter for a special needs buggy. And there's a bakery in Brierley Hill called Top Crust Bakery who we've got through to the finals, I suppose. I don't really know what to say. Where that we're picking out of 3 people or 3 charities to raise money for. It's on Facebook actually, so go onto Facebook I think we'd shared on the Black Country Blokes and vote for my daughter. Courageous Calla Rose. But because that went out there, it's spread a lot of awareness, and we've had 3 separate people come forward and want to donate money to help her get this buggy even before that competition's finished. So yeah, I'm thankful for those, and I'll name them once we've got the buggy, and I'll send pictures and show everyone. But yeah, if you can all vote for us anyway on Top Crust Bakery, that'd be fantastic. Just look at the link on our Facebook page.
And it's just sticking a thumbs up emoji.
Thumbs up emoji.
And that's as simple as it is.
Yeah, that's it. You haven't got to do anything all but that.
Sam, what are you grateful for?
I'm grateful over the past couple of weeks. I've got to make some amazing memories with family and friends. It's been beautiful.
Luke, what are you grateful for, brother?
I've just had a lovely annual leave with my family, to be fair. We've been doing a lot together and spent a lot of time, did a lot of walking. So I'm grateful for that. I think I'm just grateful for kind of the opportunity to grow and develop each day, which is nice coming here and hearing you folks talk about what you do, to be fair. So I'm grateful for being here at the moment.
Isn't it lovely that all of us, in our own different way, we're grateful for the people we have in our lives? And, and I think sometimes when we start doing the gratitude list, it's, well, what have I got to be grateful for? And it hasn't got to be, I've won the lottery, I've got a new job. It's the people who I share my life with. Isn't that lovely?
I'd like to win the lottery, though.
Well, see you later, kid.
You got it. You got it. We'll get a cardboard cutout of me here if I win the lottery.
Tell us about Ask Marc. I mean, because people who don't know about Black Country Women's Aid, we've had them on a fair few times now. So go have a look at our archives on either the podcast or the YouTube. But tell us about Ask Marc.
So I'll tell you a little bit how it started. So Black Country Women's Aid had supported men for nearly 25, 30 years. But the name Black Country Women's Aid we also recognise was a huge barrier for men coming forward for support. So they're putting some research in to look at what we could create for a male service and how we'd go about doing that. So hence where Ask Marc was created. And Marc actually stands for Male Abuse Referral Centre. So Ask Marc covers support for domestic abuse, sexual violence and rape, and stalking for men. It is different in areas. So for domestic abuse, we cover Sandwell, Walsall and Dudley. And for sexual violence, we cover Sandwell, Dudley, Walsall and Wolverhampton. And for stalking, we cover across the West Midlands, which is quite a wide area. We also thought it was really important to actually give men a choice of who they felt comfortable speaking to. So you can speak to either a man or a female. So we thought that was really essential because we want people to feel comfortable to come forward and be able to disclose such sensitive information, as there hasn't really been that support out there for men. But yeah, it's been really great in launching.
I mean, what's your background, Sam, in it? Because this is what you specialise in, like sexual abuse and violence.
So prior to coming to Black Country Women's Aid, I specialised in mental health. I then come across to Black Country Women's Aid and worked in the refuges as a complex needs worker. From there, I went into the sexual violence service where I worked with men, women and children. And then I wandered into the Ask Marc service. I was really passionate about getting into the Ask Marc service because it was so new and it was something that was so needed. And I knew that it was going to take a lot of extensive work to really push it and get it out there. So we've done the standard things like professionals do, like we've done lots of briefings to professional organisations, the police, social care, GPs. But then we also got out into the community because we want to be out there for people to see us, to see that friendly face. And, you know, even if it's women that we're speaking to also, they may have husbands, cousins, sons, friends. We want to get that word out there that support is there for men. So we've gone into community settings and just kind of had a laid back chat and let them know what the service is about. Like, you can be referred in by a professional, or you can actually just give us a call and we can let you know your options and talk you through the referral process. It's really quick, simple. It can be done over the phone or in person. So we just wanted to make the service really transparent and accessible for everybody.
Do you know how many referrals you're currently getting, roughly?
It varies. I'd probably say maybe last month we might have got about 46 a month. So we do get quite a lot of referrals coming in, and considering it's such a short space the service has been running for, it's really starting to stand on its own 2 feet, and it just shows how much it is really needed for men. And I think it's just going to constantly be a learning curve for ourselves as well, because it is new. So we're going to have to learn maybe where we can work a little bit better, how we can be that bit more transparent, how we can create more groups for men to come together and have that safe space. So it's going to constantly carry on being that learning curve even for ourselves for the first few years, I think.
Yeah, it's not only, I think with men in particular, it's not only getting the word out there and making them realise that support is available, it's getting them to it.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, we've been on our journey just on mental health, you know, and neither of us have suffered abuse or domestic abuse, I don't think, anyway. No. You know, just to get us talking about our mental health for both of us was a struggle. So I can't imagine having that kind of extra trauma on top of it and getting those people to talk.
It's amazing, like, how many people through the support group and then through just running a boxing club, how many men have come up to me individually and said, like, they've suffered either sexual abuse or domestic abuse, and they've either carried that shame with the sexual abuse through their life or the domestic abuse from their families as a kid, and then not being believed and they've taken the parents' side, or they're grown ups now and their partners are attacking them, and then they haven't always had the sympathy of the law. Because a lot of time with the law, in my experience of talking to my friends, it's, well, what have you done to make her attack you? Instead of thinking, well, that's not right. No one should be attacked anyway. I think when a man hits a woman, that is wrong. When a woman hits a man, well, what have you done to her to make her hit you? But it shouldn't be seen like that. It should be going, this is not correct. This isn't how it should be happening.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And like you say, there it is about a lot of the shame, the stigma that people created. Like, men can't talk about their feelings. Men have to be up like to a certain standards. Like, only women can talk about the feelings. A man can't cry. These are the barriers that, unfortunately, it takes a time to break those down. And I don't know really the statistics, like you say, of a man coming forward and reaching out for support after domestic abuse or sexual violence or stalking, but it possibly would be something interesting to say.
Yeah, well, I remember when Sarah come out, I might get this figure wrong now, but a woman who's leaving domestic abuse, it takes on average 7 times, did you say?
Something like
So,
that.
so,
Yeah,
so I'll
that's
keep going back.
correct.
So it does make you wonder how, kind of how men are if men are doing the same, or once they've kind of spoke up about it, are they actually, I'm done and carrying? You know, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? One of the
How
differences.
many
And
times he's got to be attacked
yeah,
before he leaves.
Yeah.
And then sometimes when he does leave, he hasn't got the cushion of, well, I've been attacked, but I've still got to leave my house and my kids, because sometimes the law does favour the women. And it's cruel, isn't it? It's tough. The law should take the side of the innocent, not the gender.
I think that'll come round though. To be quite honest, I think it is just about having more services like Ask Marc, kind of doing that. Because as far as I'm aware, there's not many other services that do stuff countrywide to what you're doing now, is there?
No, there isn't that many. And I think the thing with even the service of Ask Marc, some men will come in and it's just for a short period in the service, and it is just practical advice and guidance and support that they do want. So they'll come in, they'll want that brief chat, they'll want to offload everything that they've been going on, and they just want to know the exact people they need to speak to get help. So whether that's, we kind of point them in the direction of, this is who you need to speak to find about the legal services in your area that could be supportive to you, or this is who you need to speak to for kind of like housing support. In some instances we may be able to help with that. It's just about giving someone their options and choices, which is what we're all about. Like, everyone should be able to have that support.
Do you feel like men are a matter of facts? Give me the phone number so I can fix it, so I can get my house sorted, my finance sorted. I don't want to be fixed. I don't need to be fixed. I need my circumstance to be fixed.
Sometimes I think men come in for probably less of the emotional side of the support, like they feel they have to deal with that initial problem, and maybe that's something that could affect them a little bit further down the line, that they come back to deal with when they're ready. But yeah, the engagement is very different between working with men and women with the support that they look for.
I mean, it brings me over to you now, Luke, because you're a counsellor by trade.
Yeah.
But then you've done the Wild and Well. And we were saying, like, there's great ways of therapy. There's sitting in an office and talking about my problems. But you've gone on another angle, haven't you, of getting out into the wild and finding stuff to be creative out in open spaces.
Yeah, so I think Wild and Well for me is my passion project. So I started off as a counsellor quite young. I was 18. Funnily enough, it was Jenny Lumsden Gordon at Black Country Women's Aid that gave me a chance to go on to counselling courses. It's just not heard of. Being 18, going to counselling courses, it was a very rare occasion. And then over the years, I was a youth worker. I've worked with adults, young people, regarding mental health. And one of the things that I really enjoyed was working outdoors. And when I worked in schools, I eventually found myself, because I don't like to sit still. I'm not a sit down person. It's not me. I started taking the young people that I work with outdoors more. We used to walk around kind of the school yards. If it was a high school, it was a courtyard, maybe across the field. If it was a primary school, they tend to have more like wooded areas. And that's where I found out about forest schools. And I was like, oh, what's it? This young man says, oh, it's my camp area. I was like, what? In the forest school? You like, in a school, you like fires? And he went, yeah, it's forest school. And so I learned about forest school and became a forest school leader, which taught me certain skills about outdoor and development in that way. And then really got into like the bushcraft, which I'd say the forest school is more about learn development. Bushcraft is like your hardcore survival skills. I really enjoyed doing that and teaching that. And so when I went part-time in my work, I wanted to create Wild and Well and offer outdoor therapeutic opportunities to as many people as possible. I think now my the youngest person I work with is 6, the eldest is around 66.
Really?
So the outdoors is nice, but the outdoors, it has no age limit. Everyone likes being outdoors. I remember, I think it was Sammy or one of someone at Black Country Women's, I said, well, how would you do it for men? How would you change? Not really that much difference. The program for children has got more play-based stuff, but the actual skill sets like your bushcraft, your firelighting, your knife use, your woodcraft, well, that'll be more for adults anyway. So then we started delivering this program for the men at Ask Marc. It was all about the bushcraft and those survival skills, because you can link survival skills quite nicely to mental health. And one of my favourite ones is, if you're outdoor folks or anything like that, but you can tell north, east, south, west using a stick in the ground and following its shadow.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you get a long stick in the ground, stick it in the ground every 15 minutes, put another marker, and it'll create an east-west line so you can find north or south.
Yeah.
And what I quite like about stuff like is you can link that to mental health. As you were talking about earlier about, men kind of need things fixed. And it is common among men to want to fix things. I kind of link that to direction. So, so where are you going? So if you've ever done hiking or anything like that, I came off Kinder Scout the other day. It's it's got a massive plateau. You can get lost in bogs, and it's scary. When you're lost, I think it feels scary. But whether that is physically lost, mentally lost, or both, it is a terrifying experience. And with mental health in particular, it's a terrifying experience, not knowing who you are, where you are. But if you've got the tools to find out where you want to go, in the instance of hiking, map, compass, orient, find where you want to go. As soon as you've got a direction, you've got somewhere to move towards. And when you move towards something, you can feel better. And I think that is, like with what Sam was saying, is that the Ask Marc gives you that. The Ask Marc is that.
It's that progression, isn't it? You feel like you're accomplishing something and moving towards it. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the nice things about doing the bushcraft stuff as well, is that if people come and do our therapeutic work, because it's a therapeutic process, not therapy, it's therapeutic, you're going to go away with something anyway. You're either going to go away with the opportunities to talk, and I'll get onto that in a moment, or you go away with a new skill, whether that's lighting fire by rubbing sticks together, whether that's lighting a fire, or that's making stuff out of the woodcraft. With the therapeutic side of things, we do sessions where the fire is the central point. So for you folks here, you've got boxing. It's kind of the focal point. It's your vehicle to move towards good mental health. And for us, it's the central fire point. So during our sessions, we'll have a lot of downtime talking around that fire. Fire is primal.
But when I used to do hypnosis, I used to have a guy called Nick Davis used to do them. We used to do like hypnosis, and he'd light a candle.
Yeah.
And you would stare at the thing, and then to your peripheral vision just went blurred, and you're in a state of hypnosis just by looking at a fire. So it's that same kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, what you find.
And we are attracted to fire as human beings because it can kill us, it can warm us. We naturally go, ooh. And we just zone out naturally, don't we?
Well, have you ever looked at the campfire, and as the coals go, you get that nice dance across the coals, the red and the black, don't you? And one of the chaps that we work with actually commented on that. It's really nice just watching the coals. And stories were told around a campfire. And when you look at counselling, what counselling is, it's essentially telling a story and someone hearing your story. And that's how human beings developed, around a campfire telling stories. In a lot of ways, what we're doing when we do the outdoor therapy is we're stripping things back. It's not in a room, it's outdoors, so you've got that free air. And you're going back to that ancient sitting around, maybe messing with the fire, safely, of course, but you're feeding the fire. You're warming your hands by the fire, and then as you're doing that, you're talking. And we find that around the fires where a lot of our conversations really start to happen and come alive very much naturally.
I think as well with fire, I used to a flat years ago, my first flat with my wife, we had an open fire in there. And there's something about the warmth of that fire that relaxes you anyway, isn't it? It's kind of like when you go abroad and you feel the sun on your back. You just feel that kind of stress drain away from you. Yeah,
it's a different one to your radiator. So I used to be a plumber, so it's a bit of a different background where I am there. But the heating from the radiator is just not the same as a fire. And then you've got the sounds of the fire, the cackle. There's nothing when I'm teaching fire lighting skills to people. I know when we've been on there with Sammy, is that there's nothing better than hearing the cackle of birch twigs going as it starts to develop, and that in itself can then become a meditative. Like the candle in hypnosis, there's meditative work.
So we've read a comment coming that I'll just read out from Dr. Sarah Bishop. Thank you for listening, for starters. Which says male survivors are much less likely to disclose abuse due to feelings of shame relating to myths about masculinity. Great to see. Let's try that again. Great to see awareness being raised about these issues. Talking about this will start to reduce the stigma.
Well, we've had people on one about, and this is why we fell in love with Black Country Women's Aid. Someone close to our heart, Andrew Plant, and he come on, bravely told his story. And since then, we've had other men from the community who've come on and talked about either their sexual trauma as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, their PTSD, their CPTSD, and it's been amazing having so many wonderful people coming on. And what I've learned, we've had like from the travelling community, from the Sikh community, from the Muslim community, from boxing community to every community. Everything happened in every community. It's not, well, this sexual abuse doesn't happen in the white community, or domestic abuse doesn't happen in the black community. Everything happens everywhere. And once you realise that, it's not excusable. However, once you realise it happens everywhere, it allows you to talk about it. And I honestly believe that. How much shame goes into an act of when someone takes your innocence, or when someone does something heinous to you, you already feel shameful about the act. But then when you can't communicate about it, silence becomes the enemy, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And when we can have open conversations, with it being an old pal or a coach, it hasn't necessarily got to be a therapist. I personally believe in sometimes if you need your hair cut in, you don't go and get your gardener. You go and have your hair cut by someone. But if that's not for you, just by getting it off your chest, you're on the road to healing, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a weird thing, because it's like if you know, it's gonna sound like maybe a bit off. It's not off topic, but it's gonna sound a bit gross. But let's say if you have a parasite in you, yeah, that parasite leaches off you. It takes the food and your sustenance, and it drains you of your energy. In many ways, kind of like shame is a bit like that. It's a bit like a parasite. It gets in very slowly over time, embeds itself in you. The voices of self-doubt, the voices of dissent, which tell you you're not good enough, and they start to take away that mental energy that you have. If you can call it your mental energy, your spiritual energy, your chi, but what's going on is that over time it's eroding your capacity to face kind of what Carl Jung called the shadow side. And I don't know if you know much about Carl Jung. Carl Jung is one of my favourite psychologists, and I think because he was a bit off the wall with his spirituality. He's Jung's protege, and they split for various reasons. But Carl Jung's one of his ideas, and I am sorry for the listeners here who listen to me who know far more about this than I do. But he had this idea of something called the shadow side. Everyone's got a shadow side. It's all the things that we may not like about ourselves, the things that we don't want to admit.
Bloody hell, it's more like an eclipse.
Well, that's probably not a nice way to put the eclipse inside. And what happens is that unless that shadow side is faced, those demons on that side, we can't reach what's known as individuation. We can't grow as people. We can't grow as individuals and become who we want to be. And I think that's kind of what that parasite in you does. It stops you having the strength to face that shadow side. I don't use that on that board because you work quite closely with these.
I think the comment that was made in the comment section, like you couldn't put that any more perfect, really. I mean, those feelings are the hardest feelings and barriers to overcoming, coming forward to get support. And I think one of the things I hear the most of, I'm trying to be quite careful about the language that I use, because some people don't like to be called survivors and some people don't like to be called victims. But for people who have had that experience, having someone believe them, like to initially tell someone and have someone believe you without any judgment in that moment could be one of the hardest things to actually overcome. And it's even knowing who to talk to. Like you said, like when you think about like how long we've been launched for, it's a short period of time. We recognise that we have, like Black Country Women's Aid, have supported men, but again, that name was that barrier. So it really is about raising that awareness in communities and doing things like this to help people know that there are people out there that you can speak to. It is okay to talk about your mental health. Like, it's okay not to be okay.
But you know, when someone does come into you, in your experience, Sam, me, I walk in now and I want to get off my chest. How would I be greeted if I come in and I'm saying about sexual trauma or I'm going through domestic abuse? What kind of thing would I expect to be met with?
So when you come over to, you could either do it via phone or you can do it by coming in. A lot of the people on the first time, a lot of male clients who I have worked with prefer to do it over the phone, and they prefer to build a little bit of a relationship and trust over the phone before they'll come in to the office to meet me face to face. When you do come into the office, we have these fabulous therapeutic setup rooms. And we've even gone into that much thought that there's something called the trauma palette, which is a palette of colours which is designed to help you feel more relaxed and calming, which is kind of like greens, blues and burnt oranges. So we've even decorated our rooms in these themes also, because we do want to make it kind of that as relaxing and just to feel comfortable, not like an interview room. We want someone to be able to come in, sit down and feel like that they can talk. Like, I don't tend to try and dress too officey either, because I want to be approachable. Like, I don't want to look like that person that sits behind a screen and doesn't have those emotions or feelings or able to connect to someone. So we want to look approachable. We want the building to be kind of welcoming. And like, when coming in, this is the kind of conversations that perhaps if it was over the phone, I'd let you know what to expect from the moment you walk into the building, or till you come up to our floor, until you're greeted by myself and you go into that room, so you can feel at ease for the entire kind of process of that section. It depends what support people are looking for when they come in. Some people are looking for
But what kind of support do you offer, should I say?
Well, we've got for sexual violence and rape, you've got the option of support through court. So perhaps if someone wanted to report to the police, they could be supported through that kind of process. They could be supported with updates throughout the case. They'd be supported through court by being able to have the word known in the sexual violence and rape service is an ISVA. So that's an independent sexual violence advisor. So in that aspect,
ISVA.
Yeah. So it's cut down. So an ISVA is an independent sexual violence advisor. And if you had someone that was working with children, it's known as a CHISVA, which is a children's independent sexual violence advisor. So in that kind of role, that's who we are to them. And that's how we'd be recognised by the police or a court in that case. But we can help kind of discuss what special measures maybe need to put in place and kind of help through that process. We can be there through court with them, and then we can look at kind of intervention work with them also. So the intervention work that we look through, it's not counselling. It's basically like a good grounding to set you up for counselling. So my work with someone intervention-wise is kind of looking at perhaps your understanding of what trauma is. Like, what emotions does it affect? Does it affect kind of like your sleeping, anger? Are you even connected with your emotions? Do you actually know what you're feeling right now? Because a lot of people who have been through trauma don't always understand their emotions. And one thing that I always like to make really clear is that I could experience trauma tomorrow and I might feel it instantly, but I could also put a bottle stop in that trauma and not feel it for 10 years down the line. But something could trigger me one day, maybe a certain smell, some words, or even seeing someone, and that bottle top could just fly off. But I think it's important that people know both of those responses to trauma are actually completely normal. So the intervention works give you a good understanding of what's happening and how you are actually going to can cope more healthily before you go into counselling. Counselling is more it's more therapeutic, and it's look at peeling back layers and how those can come back together again. I wouldn't peel back layers because I'm not a counsellor.
Because I hear this sometimes about people who've had trauma as a child, and I think once again, like with outside therapy, counselling, hypnotherapy, NLP, hypnosis, all the many different layers of getting better. But I think sometimes with counselling, I think this is only my opinion. Sometimes, like when you keep going over the trauma, you're having to keep reliving it, and sometimes I find that can, in certain ways, it can do more damage than good to some people. I think so. Does that make sense? I think sometimes it's good to, it's out there. Let's put a pin in it, and now let's move towards getting better. Have I said that right?
Yeah, and I think
It's an opinion. I'd like to see what you say.
I get that, and I think that's what's important when we say that we want to give people choice.
Yes.
So they can come in, they could do intervention work with a female, they could do intervention work with a male, or they might want to like do a couple of sessions with us, get that good grounding, and they might want to go into counselling.
Yeah.
They might not want to do counselling, and they might be interested in doing group work, which is where we'd look at our outdoor therapy with Luke.
And I think that's kind of what, I get what you're saying, that some people don't like to keep telling the same story.
So have to relive it over and over and over.
There's elements of that. And I think that's when we look at counselling and psychotherapy tends to be more long term, while counselling typically tends to be more in the short term. And I think what the program that we run, and we haven't actually named it yet, although Blokes Talk tends to be maybe on the cards.
I like that.
Yeah,
We're playing words as well.
Blokes Talk, it's kind of, so we've got kind of that there. And what it does is, the therapeutic side of things is, I think mental health is, a lot of people, and I think we've been missold through a lot of kind of like glamorized versions of therapy, like people are sitting in a settee and all of a sudden they have a massive revelation, this huge revelation that is, and people do get revelations, you will, and I think, but we'll always go back into what kind of the existentialists call like your existential crisis, that time in your life, and you've probably been through it many times, something happens and you start to doubt, what's my meaning, what's my purpose, am I doing things right? And I think when we talk about mental health, we should talk about like physical health. It's a long-term process. We could, and some of the young people that I work with, I've always said that, expect, you're feeling great now, and that's great, but because they've turned around and said to me when they're in the younger years, and say, well, what happens later on down the line? We don't know, but what we can expect is maybe things aren't always going to be perfect, and that's okay. The trick is do you hold on to it like you've done for so long, or do you seek help quicker? And so when people talk about resilience and grit, and we'll use resilience as the word, it's not about being able to not talk about it and get through it. It's about being able to acknowledge your problem, see what impact it's having on you, and then work on it. I mean, and we all have our own mental health issues. I've suffered with anxiety since I was 16. I've woke up in the night thinking I'm having a heart attack and I'm having a panic attack. And those times, and when I was younger, I just didn't deal with them right, kind of ignored it, and that set me off on other pages. Now I go, okay, this is happening again. I'm hitting this point. What are the things that before helped me get out of that? And it's more about how you get out of that spiral quickly before you really reach the bad part, rather than just going, oh, I'm, cured. It's very hard to cure someone being human, and the human condition. And Buddhist terms, I really like Buddha's. He said life is dukkha. Bad translation, which means life is suffering. It's not that. It means life is often unsatisfactory. Life is not always as we would want it to be. So how do we move around those kind of challenges? And I think, again, when we're in the natural world, when we're trying to light fires, that's always a great example. You can light a fire now, it's going to be great. Tomorrow it's going to be raining. It's not going to light anywhere near as quickly as you would want it to. So how do you manage that? What things do you need to support you to get that fire going again? And I think when we're outdoors and doing the outdoor therapy, it's kind of one of the chaps that we work with, Tony said, nature's the greatest leveler. And it is, because you're all in the same boat.
As you said earlier off camera, you said like sometimes like when you've gone out camping on your own, and you get lost, it's frightening. And he said that's like when you're lost spiritually, when you're lost in the wild, when you're lost on your own and you haven't got someone to go, it'll be all right, mate. When you ain't got someone to go, it'll be all right. We're all right, Lee. But when you're on your own, you're left there in the dark on your own. Your mind plays off, and it's, well, how about if that's a wolf, and how about if that owl gets me, and how about if I fall down the hole? You catastrophize, don't you?
It's very different when you're in the dark. So I go wild camping a lot to reset, because I actually find it calming now. When I first started, it's different. When you're with a friend, some noise happens, an owl hoots, or you hear a noise that you're not sure about, and you're like, oh, what was that? It's nothing. Shine the torch, nothing. You're done. I can't do that, You're on, you go, okay, what is that? Oh, what is that? What is it? And then over time, once you understand what it is, so like we was talking about, you've heard foxes scream, it's terrifying. imagine hearing that in the middle of the woods, 5 miles from your car, no light whatsoever, you can't see your hands, it gets scarier. A barn owl coming in gets scarier. But when you start to understand what the noises are, actually they become part of what you like about going outdoors. And because you understand it, you overcome the fear quicker, or you don't have the fear. Same with mental health.
You can have that same lost feeling of loneliness sitting in your living room, can't you?
You can. Exactly.
I know that barn owl, that fox in your mind, that scary thought, that paranoia, that self-loathing. We're using the outdoors as a thing to get everyone to understand, but you can get lost in your own head, in your own. Anyway, we could get lost here now, can't we?
Your head's a wilderness as much as the outdoors.
Yeah, and I think like one thing that we're really big on, and it's like that platform we're building on with intervention work, is that resilience. Like, how do we cope when we feel like that?
Yes.
And I really practice what I preach. Like, if I can't look after myself, how am I meant to help anyone else? Like, my work is intense at times. So I will have days that I call, depending on who I'm talking to, I'll either call it like my self-love day, or it'll be my selfish Sunday. So Sunday, I will take 3 hours to myself. My phone will be off. Everybody knows to leave me alone, and I might take my dog for a walk or do anything in those 3 hours, even read a book like outside when it's nice and sunny, but do things that make me feel relaxed and set me up for the week to begin. I know by Wednesday it's kind of like it's that hump day, isn't it? So I need to check in on myself, like, am I okay? Am I feeling a bit stressed this week? Like, what do I need to make myself feel better? Thursdays, I know I've got a great option with my friends that I've set up, and we go to an exercise class, which we're all like, I'm shocking at, but it's hilarious the entire time that we're there. Yeah. So I think it's really important to be able to kind of set these methods of self-care into place, but it's learning about how to do that. And when you do feel lost and you do feel in a dark place, sometimes you just need that hand to actually pull you back and say, like, you've got this, like, how about we try this? How about we try that? And it's like I say to my clients, you know, sometimes you're going to think, oh, what are you chatting about today, Sam? That's a load of rubbish. That's brilliant. Tell me that, because I need to know what's working for you, and everybody's so different. Like, me reading a book the next person could absolutely hate. Like, some person could love going on a bicycle ride for miles, would be my nightmare. So it's important about learning about what each other likes and how we can use that to kind of cope and develop into resilience. The best forms of self-care are things that we love doing and that we no longer realise are ways of coping, because then it just becomes a way of life, and it becomes things that we love, and it can really lift us up.
Isn't it funny, when you're a child, you'll be attracted to things you like, whether it's painting, playing with your figures, or whatever it is. As we get older, we move away from those things, don't we? Yeah. We move away from just painting or paper macheing or Play-Doh or drawing or playing a harmonica, and we get more fixated on staring at a screen. But your phone knows what your voice is. If you're a conspiracy theorist, oh yeah, Lord, the world's going to end, or if you, and it attracts you to it, doesn't it? So I think sometimes going to the open space of leaving the outside world, is great. And you sat there, and when you're on holiday, I used to do a lot of traveling when I was younger, and I'd start thinking, oh, boxing. So, and by the end of the holiday, halfway through the holiday, I was actually thinking about what was important, not what I should be thinking about. I was thinking about what was relevant, and I think
it's that switch off, isn't it?
Yeah,
you're switching off. And I think it's a cliche saying, like, there's no Wi-Fi in the outdoors, but you'll find a great connection. I think it's a cliche, but there is a good saying in it, because there is a different form of connection. It doesn't have to be outdoors. You can connect anywhere with people. And I think that's one of the things where, I don't know if, you know, we can't speak for all men, but, you know, it's one of the things that I find that men do struggle with, is having your downtime, having those pamper days, if you want to call it that, or the you time. And I don't know if that's because there's a kind of, you talk about masculinity, there's a fixedness on, oh, well, I have to be fixing things, I have to be doing something, I have to be making sure that everything is okay, you know, the castle is in pristine condition. And it's kind of like that dangerous thing when you get fixated on what people tell you should be rather than what you want to be. And there's a really good theorist called Erving Goffman. He talks about that he imagines the world as a stage, and that we act out the parts we're expected to act out. And sometimes that's useful. You know, in my role, I'm a mental health professional. I have to, you know, act out, you know, when I'm in certain environments, I have to be professional and say things very measured and things like that. But then you've also got to be who you are, that backstage person, you know, the person that does like to do silly things. You know, I like to do silly things. My wife and daughter are happy saying I'm a prat.
Yeah.
That's okay. I don't mind being a prat. You know, because that's part of who I am. I am silly. And you're right. As children, we're drawn towards certain things. And there's a really good, I think it's an Irish playwright says, we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. And that's when you're starting to lose that downtime. But those playing is very important for your development, to help your brain grow. And love helps your brain grow. So being able to play and being around people where you can feel safe and secure, that will help you as a person, whether you're male or female, or however you identify. Those are the things that help develop you as a person and grow.
As you said about the stage, though, we played the roles that we think we're acting. Men, I'm strong, I'm a provider. So I play this role of being this man, nothing bothering, stiff upper lip chap.
Yeah.
And I go but really, if I break character, what am I then? And I found this in the lockdown with a lot of men. It was, all right, Bert, what do you do for a living? I'm a therapist. What do you do? I said, what do you do, Bert? I identify by what I do. And when you took that away from me, well, what are you?
Yeah.
Well, I'm out of work at the moment. No, but what are you? I don't know. It's not like, what kind of person are you? Are you a good person? Are you a spiteful person? Are you a mean person? Are you a generous person? We identify, what's your name? My name's Kev Dillon, I'm a boxing coach.
Yeah.
When you take away boxing coach, well, who is Kev Dillon then? Well, am I a daddy? Am I a stay-at-home? Then you have to really look at yourself then. And I think we identify with what we put out there. Sorry, Sam.
I was just going to say, some of the questions that you ask yourself, like, am I a good person? Am I selfish? Like, they're really tough questions anybody can kind of ask themselves. And one thing that I always particularly notice when supporting people is how harsh we are on ourselves as a person. Like, sometimes I'll say to people, like, if you was talking to a friend who'd gone through your situation, what would you be telling them now?
Yes.
Because it's totally the opposite of what we're telling ourselves. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we do need to have a word with ourselves when we're being hard on ourselves and remind ourselves that, like, we are worth this, that there is support out there. But like you say, it all kind of interlinks back into that stigma that's been surrounded by men of, like, you know, their identities. Like, I suppose when you look at it, typically a woman is a stay-at-home mom, and a father's got to go out and be a breadwinner and do all the work. So in society, we automatically put those roles on people, and we shouldn't. And I think it's going to take time to kind of keep breaking down those barriers and of how we can work better and support people better.
I think we also ought to, as men, recognise what we are feeling in a moment. I remember going to a counsellor, and one of the first things she asked me is, how did you feel about that? And it was about my daughter being in and out of hospital at the time, quite seriously ill. And I'd never really stopped to think about that. Even in the time that was happening, how do you feel? Not what happened, but how do you feel about yourself? And that was one of the hardest questions at the time that I couldn't answer. I didn't know how I felt about things, because I'd never really stopped myself and thought, oh, this is happening now. What's happening? How do you feel about that problem?
You don't respond to it, do you?
No, you don't.
Some you might be able to tell me different, but he just put the cork in, like you said before, like traumatic things happened.
I wouldn't say it was all traumatic though, Kev. Like, even in general life, I never really stopped to think how I felt about things. It was always kind of, I suppose, a logical brain. I didn't need to know how I felt about it. I needed to know how to get over it, or deal with it or whatever. It was never really stop and go, well, actually, that there peed me off, or that there made me happy, or that situation there made me this.
What is the study saying? A lot of men go on logic, women go more on emotion. Would you agree with that? Men have more of a logical brain of, well, Callum's poorly, so I've got to go and get the other kid, then I've got to go and get the shopping, then it's instead of stopping and thinking, well, bloody hell, my babbies. And sometimes it's how people cope is by this is happening, find a solution instead of just living in the emotion. Have I said that right? Do you understand what I mean?
I get it. I wouldn't like to comment on it too much because I've worked with so many different people. I just find everyone so different. I find it hard to put anyone into.
There's no right or wrong way, is there?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was just a kind of the revelation point of it. Not massive, but it was like, you know what? I ought to think about that more when I'm in situations. How am I feeling about those situations? Not looking at how to solve it, or how to do this or how to do that. Just actually feel what's going on.
It's hard to say kind of where that comes from because I mean, if I look in my relationship, actually my wife's far more logical. I'm more emotional. It's an interesting. We actually kind of we're against our not against it like we're purposely thinking about it, but we are. She's very logical and rational, and I'm very more emotionally drawn. I've kind of always been like that. I think that kind of stereotypes that men are more logical. It could be coming from like when I was a kid anyway, like lads didn't cry. It just didn't happen, so you just didn't do it. And it's almost like where girls are encouraged to be more emotional, or worse, sometimes they're seen as well, they're just being emotional and hysterical, and then their emotions are ignored in that way. So there's so many ways in which we can to unpick that would be an absolute. I think
acting the role.
Sociologists having a nightmare of it now. It is a lot about acting roles. I think we had a conversation not long ago about masks. So everyone wears these masks, and your masks can be quite useful. You know, you put in a mask because you're kept the boxer, so you've got to train children. Sometimes some of the lads that you work with quite hard, so you might have to put on that mask of, I'm going to be nurturing, but there's also going to be a bit of a stern word here. We need these boundaries, and that's fine. I think the problem that we have, and I think men have it and women have it, is eventually the mask starts to constrain. You said it the other day, and I remember like Jim Carrey with the mask, and the mask started to take over him. And that's when things start to become very problematic, when we think, well, that's me, that's who I am, that's only how I can be. Then it becomes constraining, and then it starts to cut off other potential avenues for you as a person, because now all of a sudden this mask that you could take off freely is now starting to become greyed into who you are, and then you struggle to take it off.
You fake it until you make it, and that making it has made you into something you weren't originally.
And maybe you're not happy about that.
No,
you
you're
go
not.
back to our Jungian kind of thing, that shadow side that we don't want to face. Everyone has to do it, man or woman. We all have to do that, however you identify. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes we think that that's who we are, or we present so much that that's who we are. We fake it until we make it, and then we realise where we made it is not actually where we want it to be. And it's like, ow.
We had someone on called Cherry Gilling, one of my favourite women in the world, lovely, and she's suffered with addiction. And she said, the only way I could describe it, Kev, I was driving a car and the house was on fire behind me, and I keep looking at the fire behind me, and more I looked at the fire, more I was crashing into stuff. In one until I stopped the car and dealt with the fire behind me until I could drive smoothly. And I thought that was such a great analogy of it. And it's so true. More we focus on the past and the pain and the fire and the heat behind us, we can't look forwards.
No, it becomes that kind of like proverbial monkey on your back that, until you get it off, it's going to cause you problems. And I think that's where it's important for groups like this to happen for men and women. But as we focus on men, I think having groups where there's a variety of stuff going on. So the thing is as well, like we say, if we go back to the idea, well, men don't always talk very much, or they're kind of uncomfortable talking. As we were talking about earlier, you have those circles and stuff, right? And there is there's definitely a place for those. One of the things that I kind of like about how we operate is that you have what I've called off ramps lately. That's so we could be around the fire talking. It could be a very serious conversation, and some people in there might not be comfortable with that, but they've got a few off ramps actually. They actually don't even need to walk out a circle. But one of them is I'll walk out a circle and get the firewood. The other one is I'm gonna sit here, but I'm gonna start whittling a bit. I'm gonna be a part of the conversation, but I can't engage in it too deeply at the moment. And then for some people, it's just sitting there and listening. That's their off ramp. They don't have to engage in it. And some people are on the ramp. They're there. They're ready. They want to talk, and they're fully engaged in the conversation. But what is happening all over the place is psychologically things are moving, things are happening, and so then later we might come back to the conversations, and someone will maybe put a word in there, or maybe a few sentences, and it's like we say, it's that time together where we can kind of try out new masks, new kind of ways of engaging, which start to the healing process and the growth and it's quite important for everyone, but for men, certainly those off ramps are useful.
You said it before. This like when you're in the boxing gym or on a football pitch, or often you're around like-minded people, so you've got something in common.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If anything, it's like, oh, did you see the boxing on the weekend?
Mm.
Or, oh, yeah, can you show me how to light that fire? You've got a common ground. Once you've got the common ground, Luke, can you come and show me how to do this fire? You know what you were saying earlier? I didn't feel safe enough to say it around the others, but you give me a way of putting you to a side to have a conversation with you, haven't you?
Yeah, without it being kind of obvious, like,
Big.
I need to have a conversation. Yeah, it can be much more, we're going down to that much more natural way of being, you know, kind of how people kind of do move in those spaces. And space is something that I like in my own research. I love space. This is a space right now. So in the space that we're in is allowing us to have this conversation. There's a few things that's happening there. Is that one, I'm quite comfortable to feel. I'm quite warm. It's really relaxing here. But two, I know Sammy, so coming with Sammy is really good for me because Sammy's going to be my support on this.
Yeah.
But then talking to you two and how you engage with us and how you set up this room, it works really well. So the environment now in which we're in is conducive for us to grow and develop because the environment has been created by all of us and we're all okay in this environment. That's the same when we're out in the woodlands or any group. But in the woodland, I always go, okay, then it's not my environment, it's our environment, but how does it become our environment? And that's kind of those unwritten rules that kind of surround. So sometimes we have the fire over here. Oh, this hammock's when we sit in that because we want to talk and don't want to talk to anybody else. I'm going to go over here because I need my downtime. I think, yeah, certainly environment plays a key in people wanting to discuss.
We found that we do talks up and down the country in building sites. And we found that there really, when you go in there, you have to create a environment very similar to what you were saying earlier. There's no point in us to go into a building site in shirts and ties and suits, and because we're talking to builders, we're talking to the salt of the earth, the people who who get their hands dirty every day. So if we turn up like that and we take them into an office room and then try and teach them, which we don't do. We just tell our story. We say, look, we've struggled. You open up, and we'll get people in that conversation then who will open up to us.
Yeah,
because we're on the same level.
Yeah,
and they're comfortable to do that.
We're not showing graphs.
We're not. Yeah, we're not PowerPointing them. We're not. It's not a lecture. It's having a chat. Some people, they'll engage and you'll get a great conversation. Other people after it, they'll pull you aside then and won't they, and they'll wait till people have gone and say, you know what, this has happened to me, and they'll talk to them. It's where they feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, it's that confidence.
Yeah,
it, isn't it really?
Yeah, and it's about creating that environment to make people comfortable to talk.
Luke said the power of space is something I haven't really thought about that much of. But as you say, when people don't feel safe in the space of the classroom,
yeah,
or they don't feel safe in the space of home,
yeah,
and especially your home or wherever, or work, especially your home, that's where you should feel safe. That is your home, whether you're a child, a man, a woman, whatever. And when someone takes away the peace of that space, it is petrifying and so uncomfortable.
But so we did it similar to this here. So when we originally started, we were downstairs in the boxing club on a sofa with the laptop, and none of these mics were in front of us. We did on our laptop with a microphone on the table that you didn't really notice was there, or on Kev's phone. And when we originally set up as a studio, because we wanted better sound quality more than anything, and be able to film it across various platforms, we had a desk here, didn't we? Yeah, and it was at a press conference. I kept saying to Kev, like at the time, it doesn't feel natural to have a conversation. Number one, we weren't facing the people we're talking to; they were at the side of us, and straight away, you felt like you was a newsreader. I said, we've got to change that environment. So hence we come up with some comfy sofas, sit down. As much as I'd love these, to be honest, to be even less in your face. And also, this is one of the reasons we have the TV there, is because obviously I've got to see it and see what's going on. But also, you don't see it, so it doesn't put you off. Yeah, because we get used to having that TV there, and it doesn't stop our conversation. But people who are not used to it, it would be distracting to have a TV.
Oh yeah, I think for me, if someone like me, I'm all over the place. So that would work. I think going back to kind of the space thing as well is why it kind of works is that you've kind of hit the nail on the head. Well, you know, if something's happening in your home or somewhere, that forms part of your trauma. And I was working with one young person whose mum turned around after, and he kind of hit the nail. It's kind of like it was something I'd never thought of. And it was that she said, "Oh, it's great being out here, that you're working out here. And we're in this place where there's just deer that runs through, and there's peregrine falcons." And I was like, "Okay, well, what is it about the environment that you think?" She says, "Well, he's been in loads of rooms, hasn't he? You know, what happened to him? The interview rooms were white rooms, his counselling rooms were white rooms. He's been in all those. So for me, I don't know if the rooms form part of his trauma. Whereas here, there's a freedom. There is something, and then for someone." For that particular young person, that works. But then again, for someone who may have been a refugee, being under a tarpaulin might not be what they would want. So it really does come down to individual preference. I think when we're setting up, when me and Sammy do this work together and Ask Marc, we do look at who would benefit from that environment, because not everyone
like to do something else.
Like it. And that's the thing. So I think environment, setting it up is so important.
I think it also gives you, in a room, you in this essence caged into that room, whereas when you've got open space around you, you can move away from people, and you can
you just hammock, you just swinging, you're just moving, and that's great. And I know that a lot of young people that I work with who have been diagnosed with ADHD, you can't really see it outside because they're moving so much, and it works for them sort of thing. So I think it's just different ways of engaging, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think like one of the things I find so powerful about the groups is, for everyone who's been to the groups, they've all been through a similar trauma, different and individual to themselves, but similar. And I think it's so powerful in what we were saying earlier of knowing that you're not alone. Like in groups, there can be various ages, ethnicities. And I think that's really important, like you were saying at the beginning, just knowing that what happened to you isn't normal, but the trauma that you're going through is, and that you're not alone in that trauma.
I think that's one of the key points we took away from when we was doing that support group, wasn't it? That there's many different people from different backgrounds in there, but you could guarantee you'd find someone who's experienced something similar to you, and then they're also able to then offer advice. Especially for myself with a disabled daughter, we had a few people with disabled children in there, and they can offer advice to help you through those things, not just mentally, but also actually the practicalities of looking after someone with disabled daughter. And it does, having someone there. I've done therapy, conventional therapy with a lady, and I never felt like that really hit the nail on the head, because you don't get a lot back from a therapist usually. You don't get to hear their life story, so you don't really know whether they're relating to what you're saying or they understand what you're saying. Whereas if you're speaking to someone who's been through something similar, you do get that connection of that they actually been through this. Or it could be that they've not only been through this, they're further ahead of me, and I can kind of see, if I stay on this path, I can be where they are now.
And the thing is, interesting, cool things you kind of hit there, I think, work is one, they've been through it. So it's a sense of community. Community, we don't talk about community that much anymore, but it's vital for any sort of well-being. When I did a piece of research on the impacts of forest school for emotional health, I titled it initially "Hot Chocolate with My Friends," because one of the people I interviewed, a little girl, I never met her, but she said that my favourite time is when we all sit round in a circle and we have hot chocolate with my friends, because that's when I feel calm. And I think that is important. And like you say, for some people, maybe therapy doesn't work. A lot of therapy is like saying, "Oh, you don't self-disclose." But then there's been some research that says when therapists do self-disclose, it makes a powerful connection, which actually enables the therapy to move forward quite well. But it's a contentious subject among the field, so I wouldn't get into it here. But I think where
different
you're
strokes
saying
to different folks.
it is, and I think that's kind of why I like working with Black Country Women's Aid and Ask Marc, is that kind of they realise that actually, if you're going to help somebody, it's not as simple as a one size fits all. You need when you paint on a canvas, black and white is great for some people. Other people want colour. Other people want variety. They want mess. They want chaos, or they want it pristine. So either way, I think what is important when we're looking at working with people is work with the fact that everybody's going to come with something different and want something different out of it, want it to be in a different way. I was trained as a therapist. When I was first trained, it was kind of like you'd be sitting down in a certain way, you know, kind of like this, and you'd be leaning forward. I work with children a lot. And so now my therapy is I have 2 hammocks. We might be lying in that hammock and just talking as we swing.
Yeah.
And it works because for them, that's where they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's the key, is creating environments where people want to be there and they actually want to have that conversation with you.
I think that's a great way of finishing. Have you got any big events coming up, either of you, through either charities?
I believe Black Country Women's Aid have, but I don't know the exact details about it. I believe it's about a park run, and it's to help raise funds for children in refuge to get counselling. So you could check it out on their Facebook or Instagram page.
Lovely.
Have you got a contact number for Ask Marc off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my
Don't
head.
worry. We've got Ask Marc scrolling across the bottom there. You go on the website and no doubt the contact number will be on there.
100%.
Well, before we go, have you got any quotes or sayings? I'll ask you first, Luke. You strike me as someone who's got a few. Any quotes or sayings that have helped you get through life, or any from your organisation?
There's a quote. Oh god, yeah. I mean, I've been reading a lot up on kind of Stoic philosophy lately, so I kind of go down that route. And Marcus Aurelius once said, and I think I used it for Ask Marc, so it works well. Is give yourself the gift of the present, and it kind of goes back to just give yourself that time to be in that moment, to actually exist without any sort of expectation.
And you, Sammy?
Organisation wise, we listen, we support, and we care. Don't deal with it alone. I think personal wise, I always remind myself any small act of kindness could change someone's life. You never know what hides behind a smile, so that act could change someone's life in that day.
Well, thank you. Make sure you go and follow them both on social media. If you need help and you don't know where to find them, contact us on one of our zillion platforms and we'll try our best to point you in the way. So, guys, thank you ever so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, we're on the radio this Thursday, as always, 7 till 9 on Black Country Extra. And we're here next week talking about the uncomfortable subject that is death. But quite frankly, it's going to happen to us all. So we've got 2 wonderful people coming on and talking about something that's going to happen to all of us. But until then, I want you all to take care of yourselves and each other. Ta-ra a bit.
Listen.
And that's a wrap for another show. But if there are any comments or messages that you would like us to read out for our next podcast, please be in touch. There are also lots of different organisations at the bottom of this page, and hopefully they can help you or someone you care about. Please share this to spread the word. Until we talk next time, ta-ra a bit.